Zooey Mama, how's it going, everybody? I'm here today to talk about the newest card coming to Marvel Snap and what I believe will be the strongest card coming out this season. We are talking about Cull Obsidian. So I'm going to go over how he works, the pros and cons, give 3 different deck examples of decks I've put together that I'll be trying out with Cull Obsidian right after he is released, and then I'll just give my final thoughts if he is worth buying with your very precious resources, or if you might want to skip on him and save your resources for some other cards. Now, to start off, Cull Obsidian is a 4-cost 10 powered card. Let me say that again. He is a 4/10. That is absurd. He does have the ability that you can only play him in a location where you have a 1-cost card. Now, he's going straight into Series 5, so he will be a full 6,000 tokens. He was originally data mined at Series 4, but it seems that has changed, and there are no cards coming out this month that are going straight into Series 4, okay? But he will be in Spotlights starting February 13th, alongside Nimrod and Thanos. Now, Nimrod probably isn't worth chasing after, but Thanos is. And look at that Thanos variant. Okay, a lot of people are going to be opening up caches just for that variant alone. So you may already be planning to get Cull Obsidian if you're chasing after Thanos or his variant. So he has a pretty self-explanatory ability. You need a 1-cost card in a location where you play him. Okay, so he can never be the first card you play at a location. He's going to be at least the second. So his locations might get kind of filled up, but it can be any 1-cost card. Okay, he is in Spotlights with Thanos. He has obvious synergy because any of the Infinity Stones will trigger his ability. And yeah, you just need any 1-cost card. And it can even be played on the same turn. That's pretty awesome. He's really not that hard to play. It's not the same level of restriction that a card like Atuma has, where he will just blow himself up if he's not played well. Or a card like Crossbones, who's only a 4/8, but requires you to be winning a lane. I mean, Cull Obsidian, you don't need to be winning the lane, you just need a 1-cost card there, okay? It doesn't matter what your opponent's doing. And so I do think he's a pretty clear example of power creep on Crossbones, and I think that's a bit of a problem. Second Dinner has said that they kind of keep some early game cards weaker for newer players in like Series 1 and 2, but Crossbones is a Series 3 card. That means there's some players entering Series 3, right? The Lion's Den, they're in it with the rest of us. They're unlocking this 4/8, and anyone's open Spotlight caches can get a 4/10. And I think Cull Obsidian is easier to play than Crossbones, so I hope they're planning to either buff or rework Crossbones soon. But I just think this is a pretty clear example of power creep, and Cull Obsidian is going to be pretty dang strong. So let's take a look at Cull Obsidian's main pros and cons. First of all, let's start with the good stuff. He has premium stats. Okay, again, a 4/10 is nuts. The only cards that have a flat 4/10 are Atuma and Sentry, I believe. And again, Atuma is much harder to play. You specifically need armor or something like Invisible Woman or Supergiant, so he doesn't reveal until the end of the game, or you need to hit him with a 0, okay? Just negate his ability. And then you have Sentry, who basically is a package with Annihilus. You basically need to play Sentry with Annihilus, okay? Cull Obsidian is a bit more standalone, and he still does get affected by Zabu, so he could be a 3/10. That's pretty crazy, okay? That is just huge power, and again, I don't think he's that hard to play. So he does discount Scar, so it's very nice. If you play Cull Obsidian on 3 because of Zabu, you could actually play Scar on turn 4. So you could do 10 power turn 3, 11 power turn 4. He is easy to play as long as you're playing a deck that has multiple 1-cost cards, okay? Whether it's a Thanos deck or just a deck with a lot of 1-costs, he's not that hard to play, okay? Again, he's more restrictive to your deck than actually in-game. Sentry, you need to play on the left or middle. Atuma, you would need to play like in the same lane as Armor or something. Cull Obsidian, you just play him down, okay? And you put the 1-cost card where you want him, but it can be the left, middle, right. There are some locations that will just give you 1-cost cards, whether it's the ninjas or the squirrels or the raptors. So he's just going to be kind of easy to play as long as your deck is built to accommodate him. And important to note, you can't play him on the same turn as the 1-cost card, okay? This is huge. This means if your game did not start out great, you did not get a 1-cost card for turn 1, Turn 2, let's say you play Zabu, you could on turn 4 play a 1-cost card on the left and Cull Obsidian on the left on the same turn, okay? Or at worst, you didn't get Zabu and you play Cull Obsidian on turn 5, but you're still getting him alongside a 1-cost card, and that card has his own power and ability. So he's really never like a 5/10, but it's just a great backup option that if you missed your curve, you can still get him out. Okay, a card like Crossbones, if your opponent got a strong lead and you're not winning any locations, you can just never play Crossbones, okay? And at the end of the game, you can only play Crossbones on a location you're already winning, which kind of sucks. Cull Obsidian, at the end of the game, you can just slap him down on any location you want. So I think that's huge, and again, very important to note that you can play him on the same turn as the 1-cost card, or you can play it on different turns. Okay, it's up to you. And now to talk about the bad, again, we do need a deck that accommodates Cull Obsidian, okay? So a Thanos deck will do it because he just adds 6 1-cost cards into the deck with the Infinity Stones, so that's definitely going to be enough. If you're not playing Thanos, I'm thinking you probably want at least 3 1-cost cards, okay? You could maybe get away with 2, but if you just don't draw them, it's going to feel really bad. So you're probably going to want 3 or more. It's going to be kind of hard to play with more than 3 1-cost cards unless you're specifically doing a zoo or bounce list. So I think 3 might be the magic number, but again, you do need a deck that works with him. Okay, he's more restrictive in the deck building phase than he is in the actual game. Another important thing to note is he does die to Shang-Chi. Okay, so he discounts Scar, but he dies to Shang-Chi. And this isn't horrible. I mean, yes, you can try to protect him with armor or Cosmo, and he will not get protected by Kyera. But Shang-Chi is often trying to kill something that costs like 5 or 6. And so if your opponent Shang-Chi's your 4-cost Cull Obsidian that you maybe even got out on turn 3, they're not going to have Shang-Chi for your other big stuff. So it's potential that Cull Obsidian is kind of Shang-Chi bait. I mean, we'll have to see, but again, using a 4-cost card to draw out your opponent's Shang-Chi isn't the worst thing in the world. And the last point is that, well, Cull Obsidian is kind of boring. He's just power on the board. You play him, and then he sits there. He's power, okay? Kind of like She-Hulk, but She-Hulk, maybe you gotta kind of, manage turns to get her cost reduced. Cull Obsidian, you just play him when you can. And he will be big and powerful, and I think he's very good. But he is kind of simple and boring. So if you're looking just for a fun card, I'm not sure it's Cull Obsidian. So let's get into the decks I'll be trying out. So my first deck for Cull Obsidian is this Lockdown Junk list. We do have cards like the Hood, Sentry, and Annihilus. That's a junk package. For Lockdown, we do just have Storm in here, but we can add power to her close lane. If we got Nebula down first, we can throw Jeff over, and even the newly buffed Omega Red can add power to that lane. Now, I do have Scar in here because we've actually got Cull Obsidian and Sentry. So we have 2 4-cost 10-power cards in here. If we did get Zabu down on turn 3, we could have a play line that looks like Zabu into Cull Obsidian into Sentry, in which case your Scar costs 2. Or you could even go, again, with a line that includes Storm into whatever you want on turn 4. Maybe you hit down Sentry, Annihilus on turn 5, and your Scar will cost 4 on turn 6. So it's just good power. Again, if your opponent has Shang-Chi, we've got 3 targets here. Okay, we've got 3 cards that have 10 or more power, and they can probably only Shang-Chi one of them. And Shadow King's not going to do anything to Cull Obsidian, Sentry, or Scar. Again, they're just flat power. So I think this deck is just going to be really strong and hard to deal with. Next up, I decided to put Cull Obsidian into a Sarah control list. So we do have, again, just multiple 1-cost cards. Okay, we've got Nebula, Spider-Ham, and Iceman. These cards you slap down to gain power or tempo over your opponent. We've got Zabu again, because getting a 3-cost, 10-power Cull Obsidian would be great. But we do also just have big power cards like Maximus and Gladiator. And then we've got Sarah, so we can save our huge combos for the final turn. Okay, if we did have Zabu and Sarah down, Cull Obsidian would be a 2/10. So we could slap him down on the last turn alongside Gladiator, who would also cost 2. And then maybe even like Omega Red. Okay, you could just slap down insane power if you've got cost reduction on Cull Obsidian. And last up, we've got a Thanos Lockjaw list. Again, Cull Obsidian, He's pretty much designed for Thanos decks. I mean, he is a member of the Black Order. I personally don't play too much Thanos. That's why I'm going to try more of the previous decks that I just showed, where they focus on just other one-cost cards. But obviously, he's going to work well with Thanos, okay? So we have a fairly standard Thanos Lockjaw list. We're just going to try and get big power stuff out of Lockjaw. If we don't get Lockjaw now, we have a bit more options, okay? We can Psylocke into a 5-cost card, or we can even just go like Cull Obsidian into Devil Dino or Vision. And we've got multiple ways to reduce Scar's cost as well. So this deck, we already know it works. So just putting Cull Obsidian in here might actually help us in the games where we don't draw Lockjaw. Okay, the games where we have a bit of an awkward curve, Cull Obsidian might be here to kind of help fill that space, which could be really nice. So to give my final thoughts on Cull Obsidian and also showcase his nice Spotlight Cash variant, I think it's a bit better than his original, but it's not too different. In terms of being fun, I give Cull Obsidian 1 out of 4 stars. He's pretty boring. He fits in, maybe kind of select number of decks, and he just kind of goes down as 10 power. If you can play him, you can play him. If you can't, then he sits in your hand. And yeah, he just doesn't do much. Pretty boring card. In terms of flexibility, I was going back and forth between 1 and 2 stars here, but he doesn't only work in Thanos. You can play him in a Sarah or Tempo list like I showcased in this video with a couple 1-cost cards. You could even play him in something like a bounce deck. Okay, they have a ton of 1-cost cards. If you did want a surprise big power card, he would work there. Even Zoo deck. Okay, Zoo has actually been getting a lot of tools recently with Kyera and even Black Swan. So I do think Cull Obsidian fits into a few things, but not a ton. He may not fit everyone's playstyle. In terms of being competitive, I think he's good. Okay, I think he's a good card. I was going back and forth between 3 and 4 stars, but I don't think he's going to break the game. I do think he's clearly power creep on Crossbones, and they should definitely rework him because this is pretty bad. Okay, again, Crossbones is a Series 3 card. He should not be getting this pure power creep example into the game, which is, in my mind, is what Cull Obsidian is. So my overall thoughts is that he's worth it. Okay, now if he doesn't fit your playstyle, if you never play Thanos or Zoo or any deck with a bunch of 1-cost cards, then maybe skip on him or at least wait a couple days to see what people are playing him with. Again, he has 6,000 tokens. That's a lot. I'm not going to go after him with tokens. I'm going to go after him with Spotlight Caches. This is pretty good Spotlight Cache. Okay, if you don't own Nimrod, probably not worth chasing after, but if you don't own Thanos, it's definitely worth chasing after. Thanos comes in and out of the meta. It's a great purchase, especially if you don't have like a full collection. He's great if you can't make a lot of decks, because a Thanos deck, he makes a lot of it on his own, just with his Infinity Stones. If you do have Thanos, but you want this variant, then go after this variant because it's amazing in the Spotlight Cache. So I do think Cull Obsidian's worth going after for Spotlight Caches. If you're a bit concerned or you think he doesn't fit your playstyle, or if you're just looking for a fun card, then you could wait a couple days and see what people are playing and if you think Cull Obsidian is fun or not at that point. Okay, again, I don't think he's a fun card. I just think he's a really good card because simple, big power is good. We've seen those cards get nerfed. We've seen Blob get nerfed, Miss Marvel. Just these cards that put out good raw power, they're strong. Okay, I have no doubt that he will be a solid card. And again, I think he's going to be the best card coming out all season. So let me know what you think of Cull Obsidian in the comments down below. Let me know what decks and combos you plan to play with him. And until then, stay positive. We'll see you next time.